So that really cool animation you just saw there is actually one that I made in Geometry Nodes last night. And I thought I have to make a tutorial on it because it really came out pretty well. I wasn't expecting it to be anything spectacular. So this one is actually pretty simple as far as Geometry Nodes go. We're going to be using a few very basic nodes, even though it looks complicated, it really isn't. Ideally, you'd know a thing or two about geometry nodes, and I will warn you, this is going to be relatively fast paced. So if you don't like those sort of formats, definitely watch a different video, maybe something by Blender Guru, something that goes really slowly. But as always, I will be putting the blend files onto my Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy this and that you're able to make something really cool with it. Share it with people, put it on Instagram. I'm going to be rendering this out in a wider aspect ratio, but if you guys want to put it in a square one, go ahead, make it your own, do something cool. Let's get started. I guess let's jump right into a fresh scene in Blender. We're going to just be using the default cube today. It doesn't really matter what you use. But what you do want to do is you want to go Shift A, just add in a simple torus under the mesh primitives, just move it somewhere to the side. Doesn't really matter where you place it. We're just going to add it to a collection anyway. But what you want to do is you want to tab in with all of that active, just right click, click subdivide once, and that's done. We will later on add a displacement to this. That's pretty simple, but for now, we just want to focus on our geometry setup. So let's select the cube as the object we're going to be adding a geometry modifier to. We're going to go to Geometry Nodes, and let's just click New with that cube active. Now, what we want to do first of all is reference that torus. So we're going to go Shift A, we're going to go to Search, let's type in Object, and let's get the object info, put it up here. And let's take that geometry output because we want geometry, put it into the group output here. Go on the selection option here and let's get that torus over there. So now it is being referenced here. Just move this group input to the side a little bit so it doesn't get in the way. Now I'll quickly explain what we're trying to do here. We want to take this object that we're referencing, the torus, and we want to generate some points, and then we want to take those points and we want to put instances on them. The instances are going to be little icospheres, and we're going to make 3 sets of those instances, put them all together in a join geometry, and then we're going to use different transforms. So we're going to add some keyframing to later to make those little spheres pop out. And one thing I'll also teach you is how to do the normal corrections. So all of the individual spheres are following the normals. If you don't know what I'm talking about right now, don't worry, you'll understand as we continue, but I'm just giving you a little bit of a rundown of what we're going to be doing here. So let's start by going Shift A, let's go Search, and let's just get instances, and let's go instances on points, and let's put it in here. So now we have the geometry going into the points here, but we do need something to instance, right? So let's go Shift A, Search, and let's get our first icosphere. Okay, just get an icosphere here, plug that into the instances. And at the moment, it's way too big. So let's just come here to the radius and make it 0.03 and press enter. Because now they're all the right size. So to make it really simple for you to understand, what we're doing here essentially is we're telling Blender to take this piece of geometry, that's the torus, generate some points, and then put this icosphere as an instance wherever those points are. So pretty simple to understand. But just as you're familiar with the scaling, the rotating, and the translation you get in Blender, what we're going to do is we're going to move this icosphere up, and we're going to get a transform node. So we're going to go Shift A, Search, and just to get a simple transform, grab it there and put it on this cable. And now we have the ability to control this a little bit more. We can mess around with the scale, we can mess around with the rotation, all that sort of stuff. But with this one, we're not going to have to do that. So we'll just leave it as it is for now. But we also want to actually see the geometry of the object that we're referencing here with the object info node, and that's the torus that's over here to the side. So the way we can combine these two is by coming here to our group output, and we're going to go Shift A, we're going to go Search. Let's type in Join, and we're going to get a Join geometry node, and let's plug it in here. Then we're going to take this object info geometry output, we're going to plug it into that join geometry, and now we can also see our icosphere along with the mesh here, the torus that's being referenced. And now that we have that done, let's quickly go back here to our icosphere. So this is going to be our initial icosphere, and we want this one to be at least 2 subdivisions here. And then what we're going to do, we're going to move that down a little bit, and we're going to create our second sphere. So we're going to go Shift D to duplicate, we're going to move that up. And this is going to be our second little sphere. So let's take that geometry output temporarily, put it into the instances. And it's the exact same thing happening here. But what we're going to do with this one is we're going to come here to the radius, and we're going to make that one 0.02. So it's going to be a bit smaller. And with this one, we're also going to come to our scale. And on the Z for the scale, we're going to make it 2, like that. See, now it's a little bit elongated. And we're also going to come here to the Z on the translation and just move it out a little bit. So it's just a little bit higher. Now, at the moment, what's going on here is a bit of an issue, because even if we were to now go Shift A and just go search, get a join geometry, put it on here, and now take our original Icosphere, plug that into the join geometry. So now both of those are going into the instances of the instances on points. It's all working, but it's just pointing in the wrong direction. We somehow need this to take into account the normal directions of the torus here that's being referenced over here by the object info. So how do we do that? Now, the simplest way I know how to do that, there may be some other ways, is to use an align Euler to vector node. So we're going to go Shift A, we're going to go search, I'm going to type in align, and we're going to get to align Euler to vector, place it down here. And over here on the instances on points, what we're going to do is we're going to take this align Euler to vector and we're going to plug it into the thing we want to affect. And what's that? That's going to be the rotation, right? Because that's what we want to affect. We want the rotations of each individual instance to be obeying the direction of the torus normals. We want that to be the Z, so let's make that Z. And then we also want to tell it what that is, and that's going to be the normal. So let's go Shift A, search, and type in normal. Get a normal node, and let's just plug that then into the vector, because we want the vector normals. And now you can see these are all obeying the normal directions of our torus. So that's pretty simple. At the moment, I'm not too happy with all of this not having smooth shading. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to come here to the join geometry, and just before it goes into the instances here, I'm going to go Shift A, search, and just get a smooth and set shade smooth and just put it over here. And now that has smooth shading, but we don't want the torus necessarily to have smooth shading. We'll see how we go with that. But before we go any further, let's just quickly add one more little icosphere here to our little system here. It might look complicated, but all we have to do is just grab these icosphere and transform nodes that we already have, just move them out a little bit. And let's just grab the top one here and just go Shift D to duplicate, move that up. And let's just take that one and plug it into the join geometry as well, so it's part of this. And of this one, we're going to come here to the radius and make it even smaller. Let's make it 0.01. And let's come here and bring it out further on the Z. So let's just bring that one out further. Okay, and let's also go to the scale here and just make it 1 on the Z so it's perfectly round. So now we have our original little sphere there in the inside. We have the little elongated one that's a bit higher. And then even higher up from that is this little icosphere. And eventually we're going to animate with some keyframes these transforms so we can make them go in and out of each other like that. So this is actually a pretty simple way of addressing this type of animation. But before we go any further, I might also like to add some materials to it, just so we can already start to see what's what. And it's actually quite simple to do. All we're going to do is go to a materials tab with that torus still selected, or actually it's the cube we have selected, and we're going to just give it a material, and let's just call that material red for now. It doesn't really matter, it's just so we can visualize what we're doing. And we're going to come over here, let's give the top one that material. So the very top icosphere, we're going to go Shift A over here, search and get a set, and then get a set material, put it on this cable, and let's just get that red. So we can see it, let's just go to our viewport display and make it red. Okay, this is just for display purposes. We're then going to grab the set material, Shift D, duplicate it, put it on the next icosphere, down from the top one. Let's give this another material, let's just call it blue. Once again, it really doesn't matter, it's just so we can see what's going on. Give it a viewport display color and let's select blue. And the same thing for the one at the bottom, Shift D with the set material. Let's create another material and let's just call it purple. And let's give it a purple in the viewport and give that the purple. So now you can see what's going on here. And the same thing with the torus. Come up here to the object info. Let's just duplicate one of those set materials, place it on here. And let's just give this another material here, new. Let's just call it yellow. And let's come over here to the set material. Let's choose yellow and give it a viewport display as well. So now you can see what's going on here, okay? It's not actually that hard to wrap your head around it. It's pretty simple, even though it looks complicated. But what we could also do, just for a little bit of extra organization, let's just frame things. So we're gonna go Shift A, let's just go down to layout, get a frame. Let's place a frame here, and let's just take all of these icosphere objects here with their transforms and their set materials. Let's just take them and press G and just move them on top of that frame there. So they should go right into the frame. Then just click on the frame itself. Then go G to move it up like this. You can press N to go to your properties panel, give it a color here, go to the drop down. Let's just make that orange and let's just call it something like Icospheres. Okay, just so we know what it is. This is where our spheres are. This join join geometry node, just drag it in there as well, because it's technically part of that whole setup. And even the set shade smooth, let's just drag that in there as well. Then we're going to take the normal and the align Euler to vectors, drag that out. These two can just stay over here. And then let's just take this object info, pull it up here along with its own set material. Let's just go Shift A, get another frame, place it over here. Take those two and just drag it on top of there and select that frame. And let's give this one a nice kind of blue, and let's call that Torus, like so. So there we have the torus, and let's just drag this join geometry and output node up a bit. So what we have here is our icospheres down here. Here we can control all of that. Here we have our torus, and here we have the instances to point setup and this little system here along with it that allows us to control the normal direction. So it's actually pretty simple when you look at it like that. Let's just also quickly come here to our torus. Let's add a few more nodes here. We're going to go Shift A, search. Let's just type in sub and get a subdivision surface, put it on this cable here next to the set material, drag it into the torus system there. And then let's just also give it some smooth shading. So we're going to go Shift A, search, and just go set smooth and get a set shade smooth. Put it on there and also put it in that system there. So now the torus is a bit smoother and it also has smooth shading. So I believe that is everything we need now to make our torus. It's all there. We can now animate it. Let's just quickly select the torus next to it there that's being referenced. And let's just quickly go to our modifiers and let's give that a displacement. Go to your object data properties for that. And then go new, come to the drop down here, and let's just give it a cloud. And we need to turn that way down. So let's just go to our modifiers. Let's just bring that strength to 0.2 as a start. Okay, that looks okay. We're going to be animating that anyway later with some keyframes. But if we now go over here to our geometry node setup, you can see that now that looks a lot more interesting. So let's quickly set up a camera. So we're going to go into our front orthographic view. Over here, we're going to go Shift A, we're going to go to our camera, add it in, and then let's just go G, Y, and move the camera back. And let's go to our camera settings. Let's give it something ridiculous in the focal length. Let's go for 120, why not? And then what we're going to do, we're going to go into our camera view. In fact, I'm going to get rid of the other camera. Just press 0 to go into the camera, and then G, middle mouse button with the camera selected, and zoom back like so. While we have that little cursor in the center, let's go Shift A. Let's just quickly add in a plane, RX90, enter. Then we can go SX and just scale it to the same dimensions as your camera. Then you're going to go G, Y, and move it back in your scene. Not too far, about that much. And then go into your camera, and then S to scale it up so it's nice and big. And then you're going to take that and you're going to hold in Shift and select your camera, and you're going to go Control P, Object, Keep Transform. Now you can select your camera, go into Camera View, go to your Pivot Transform and select the 3D cursor. With your camera active, you can double tap R and you can now rotate, and your little background there will be perfectly in frame. So let's just move down so we can see it from a lower angle like that for now. Pretty cool. And let's just grab that other torus, press M, New Collection, go OK, and then just hide that so we don't see it. So we can also select our plane at the back, give that a material, go to our materials, give that a new material, and let's just call it BG for background. We're also going to go to our render setup, our render properties, and let's just go make sure it's Eevee. Try cycles if you want. It is going to be quite a slow render. For some reason with Geo nodes and cycles, I found it to be pretty slow even with the setup I have on my computer. Maybe there's something I can do to optimize that. If anybody knows, mention it in the comments. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to enable ambient occlusion. We're going to go for screen space reflections. If you're working with refractive materials like glass, make sure to enable that. I'm not going to do it. But that should be all for now. So at this point, if you wanted to go ahead and add some materials to this, we've already added the materials, but if you wanted to edit them and make them look cool, add some lights, you could. You don't have to do this as an animation. But what I'm going to quickly show you if you're interested in it is how do you actually do the animation. So it's quite simple. So select the torus itself. And let's come down here. You can see the little cross, left click and just drag up to add another window. Come to the drop down and we do need to see our timeline, right? So come to the end frame value. I'm going to go over 120 frames here, more than enough for what we're doing. And let's go over to our properties or our modifier properties. In fact, we also need to just enable that other torus again and just make sure it's selected. And remember we added a displacement there. What you're going to want to do is come to frame 1 and let's just give that something strong like 0.4. And let's just click on this little button here to give it a keyframe. Let's go to the middle and let's give it something like 0.6. And let's click there on the little keyframe button, and we want it to be back exactly where it was. So we can just go back to 120, click on here and go 0.4 once again, and then click on the little keyframe. So now it starts the same way and it ends the same way. So it should be perfectly loopable, which is great for all of you Instagram people out there. With the actual little balls here, if you want to give a little bit of animation there, just select a Geo Nodes object, come in here, and let's just say, for example, these little red balls here. Maybe we want them to go in and out. So let's come to frame 1, and let's come here to the Z transform under the translate, hovering over it with a value of 0.07. Just press I on frame 1, then come halfway, and let's drag that one out a little bit further. Let's make it 0.16. On frame 60, press I to add in a keyframe. And then what you can do is just go to the very end, and on that Z, let's type in 0.07, press enter. So the exact same value, and then press I. So now that should be loopable. And let's do the exact same thing here to the little blue one there, the little oval one. We're gonna go here to the Z on frame 1. Let's just press I, and let's just go to frame 120, and let's also press I. And then in the middle here, we can give that something a bit lower, maybe, and then press I. And let's see what that looks like over here. So let's go to frame 1, hit the space bar, and check that out. Pretty cool, right? So with that displacement there, let's just grab that torus from earlier. Let's just go to the midway point, and under the displacement strength, let's just make that negative 0.7. And let's just click on the keyframe again, just to add that value in. So we just get a little bit more movement there. Okay, that's looking pretty cool. So what you can do at this point is you can go ahead, Shift A, add in your area lights, move them up, give them a bit of strength. Let's go with something like 200. Maybe increase the size, and then press Z, go rendered, see what it looks like. And then go to your world, click on here, give that a sky texture, and then bring the strength down to 0.2 maybe. Then select your background, give that a color. So let's just go over to the materials tab. Remember we added that in earlier. Let's just go to the base color, make it something nice and purpley. And then at this point, you can select the geometry node object again, and you can go over to your shading workspace, go into your camera view, press Z, go rendered. And then you can take each one of these colors that you've added here, and you can come in here and make them whatever you want. So the purple, I'm gonna make it purple. The blue, you can make that whatever. You don't even have to make it blue. I'm gonna go over type of purple again. Maybe even orange. Nice bright orange. And red, I might make that a bit yellowish, or maybe even a bit green. Maybe even give it a metallic. Drag the roughness down. You can do whatever you want. You can also go to your yellow material, that's the torus in there. Maybe make it yellow, make it nice and liquidy by bringing the roughness down. I mean, this is completely up to you. You can also take your lights, Shift D to duplicate them, rotate them a little bit. This is definitely something where you guys can make it your own. With my original, I'll quickly show you guys here. This is what I did. I just messed around with the different parameters a little bit. I made some things metallic. I also added in a nice shallow focus here. So I'll quickly show you guys how to do that. If you're interested, all you have to do is go Shift A, add in an empty as a cube, move it forward, scale it down a bit, then just select your camera, and you can go enable depth of field, select the little eyedropper, and then select that empty, and then bring that f-stop value way down. And just like that, you now have that nice soft focus. Yeah, so let's just quickly do something fun with these materials. I don't really want to do too much here. It's getting a bit lengthy, but yeah, I might make the orange a little bit more metallic. I might make the purple balls blue, like my original, make it also slightly metallic. And the green ones, I might make them a bit bluish as well. And that background, I'll probably make it a lot darker, just to give a bit of nice contrast. And with the lighting as well here, I think that can definitely take a bit more effort, but this is pretty simple stuff to do. There's nothing complicated about this Geometry Nodes project here. You can add some slight color variations to your lights. But I'd like to see what you guys come up with. Try this out, and as always, feel free to render this out as a final animation if you like it. But this is how to do this kind of cool, trippy donut torus thing. I will be putting the blend files on my Patreon, so feel free to check that out in the description below. And also check out my Skillshare. I've got a lot of cool stuff in there, and if you use my link in the description below, you get it free for the first month. And you don't have to sign up if you don't want to.